Probes and scouting ships found another species on the edge of the galaxy. The denizens of the Great Three decided that they would make a good conquest. Everyone was excited for the addition of new species to the Great Three, only for the entire galaxy to collectively soil its panties at the sight of the first human warship fleet. The children's eyes stared up at me with awe as the sound of alarms began to blare. The Great Three expected to come across an odd Deathworlder species that only recently ascended to the stars, a Skakandi invasion fleet assembled at humanity's borders. A few dozen panic transmissions and hastily garbled swear words later, the very same fleet returned home, telling a harrowing tale of how they miraculously managed to bullshit their way out of what would likely have been the most embarrassing military defeat in galactic history. A squad of soldiers charged past us, each one readying their pulse rifles. You see, the Skakandi were expecting Deathworlders, a harrowing fight and a decent battle. They were not expecting a fleet 20 times their size. They were not expecting every warship to be armed more heavily than most planetary defense networks. They were also not expecting a species whose engineering ability allows their warped sense of scale to field ships that were nearly 3 times the galactic average in size. They also were not expecting a race of battle-hardened war veterans who now had, count them, 3 vassal states under their command, plus a full species extinction under their victory belt. The ship shook as the shields took a hit. The first contact was supposed to be the Skakandi war fleet entering a system, fighting off the locals and then grabbing a few slaves for the Empire. The Skakandi instead encountered 6 human battleships, an entire support fleet and a lone colony that it was protecting. These warships outranged, outgunned and outclassed their slaver fleet 10-1, and this was nothing more than a local colony defense fleet. Panic immediately gripped the Great Three. Sanity, or at least something that resembles sanity, took hold of the Great Council, and they ceased all invasion plans or attempts at further antagonization. I gladly had the children's full attention with my history tale, as the sight of 5 soldiers struggling with a captured general passed us in the background. This, as it turns out, was a very smart thing to do, as barely 2 months after the Skakandi first contact, a human warship fleet was encountered by scouts on the edge of Ramakai territory. The human warship fleet had nearly 2,000 ships, half of which were larger than most of the Ramakai battleships. Humans also had a new concept for warfare called the sentry cruiser, which was the essence of a giant gun with engines. It could wipe out half the fleet with one shot. Alarms blared as an explosion rocked the ship's hull. The Great Three were quick to ensure measures to placate the humans, or at the very least make borders clear and simple. Diplomatic teams were sent through, and a peace accord was created with humanity. This, of course, didn't stop the Great Three from attempting covert operations to seize humans as slaves. You see, the Great Three is a term colloquially used to describe the 3 largest slaver empires in the galaxy. See, the Great Three were 3 slaver empires that teamed up together and used their power and resources to enslave half the galaxy. An angry, untranslated message hastily garbled itself through the intercom. I quickly used a remote to block the transmission and shut it up. Because of their influence and aggression, half of the galaxy's history and culture has been effectively erased. The Great Three took exceptional lengths to close ranks and try keep humans out, telling them lies and falsehoods to keep the humans out of their business. Because, you see, the humans are freaks of nature within their own freak of nature. They're Deathworlders, you see. Oh, Deathworlders aren't abnormal? Well, the Skakandi come from a Class 1 Deathworld, while the humans come from a Class 9 Deathworld. The children gasped in awe as I continued to keep their attention through the chaos. Well, now we understand each other. Their warships, what we consider cruisers, are to them barely destroyers. Their Titan-class warships we encountered were actually just their standard-issue dreadnoughts. Apparently humans have this thing where they lack any sense of scale and have the engineering prowess to express it. Not only this, but they mine entire planets to get their resources, and they do it with 10 times the speed and efficiency that we do. The kids smiled, a sparkle in their eyes I never thought I'd ever see cross their faces as we entered slipspace. So who are the Great Three? Well, the Skakandi are tyrants who use slaves for labor. The Ramakai are insectoids who not only use slaves for labor, but also food sources. The Imakaiko are the worst, though. They're just tradesmen. They see others in the galaxy as little more than a business opportunity, and they enjoy doing very bad things that I can't say in front of kids to their slaves. The kids booed at my statement, and I waved them to be quiet. But this is why we are here. The humans, you see, they hate slavery. They think that using another person against their will is very evil. That is why we are here, in a stolen battleship with a rogue admiral, making our way through to human space with a captured general. You see, kids, what we are doing is showing the humans the truth, so the Great Three can't escape the justice that has escaped them for over 3,000 years. The kids yelled with glee as the universe returned to reality. Human fleet sighted! Enemy fleet! In pursuit! The captain's voice bellowed through the intercom. Evasive maneuvers! He cried as we barely missed scraping against a human warship's hull. Jesus Christ, watch your goddamn self. Who the hell do you think you are coming out of LS at that speed this close to the star? What are you, insane? A human voice yelled out from the radio, all communications being relayed through the intercom. The ship shuddered as the humans angrily yelled at us. We almost immediately got caught in a series of tractor beams, and we were effectively yanked out of our hasty maneuver. We saw a clear sign that the local security forces were now latching onto our ship and were dragging us into a nearby ship's hangar. Human carriers outsized us a few times over, and the one we were being towed into was 10 times the size of one of our cruisers. Human radio communications yelled at us angrily as they dragged us inside, closed the blast doors behind us, locking us in the behemoth ship. Prepare to be boarded! We heard coming from outside, and suddenly the ship's doors were forced open and a swarm of heavily armed humans charged into the ship. We didn't do much about this fact, for 2 reasons. Firstly, we had no intention of fighting back against them. We were willing to surrender to the humans anyway, claiming status as refugees or escaped slaves. We had all reason and intent to surrender. The second reason was the shell shock from them boarding us and flooding the ship as fast as they did. Even if we intended to fight back, there was no chance if we fought back. Within a minute of the hangar doors being closed, I had 24 humans with rifles and weapons sweeping the cargo hold where I was with the children. Humans were more than just a little surprised at the sight of a few disarmed soldiers of many different races, a captured general and cargo hold containing children. They were bewildered as to what the hell had just appeared on their front door. Before any human officer could ask what was going on, they got their answer. Unidentified warship fleet entering the system, 200 ships, cruiser class and lower. A human voice spoke over the intercom. I laughed at that. Silly, silly human. Those aren't cruisers, they're battleships. One of the humans, holding a datapad of some kind, looked at me with confusion. Seriously? That's not a battleship. It's too small. That's just because you freaks of nature have such a broken sense of scale. You don't know how to build small, I yelled, barely able to contain my laughter. Stand and deliver. Return our property to us immediately. The voice of the Skakandi general blasted over the comm. "What the hell's going on?" one of the humans asked. "Humans! I am Grand Admiral Thrak Thran Tar of the Skakandi Imperium. I order you to immediately hand over my property." The voice of one of the Great Three's best admirals came over the comm. The children instinctively stood to attention as years of indoctrination hit them. A short, incoherent argument followed through the radio as the various sides yelled orders at each other, and the soldiers inside our ship took the chance to look around. During this barking contest, a human male of high status, judging by his uniform and medals, appeared on our ship and inspected the area. The argument was being broadcast across our internal communication array. The human male, presumably an officer judging by how the human soldiers around him were acting, calmly walked around the ship until he got to us in the cargo bay. He looked around us, just looking, bending over with his strange eyes and looking closely at various objects. Sergeant." "Yes, sir?" the human soldier responded. "You an expert in remotes or explosive devices, yes?" he asked, his voice calm and stoic. "Affirmative, sir." "Do you see what this is?" the officer asked, pointing to the odd metallic devices placed around and on the children's bodies. Belts, collars, bracelets, anklets. The soldier looked at the devices and used a toolkit to fiddle with one of them. It didn't take him long, and one of the collars popped off one of the children's necks. The child squealed in terror and clawed at his neck, then became shocked, surprised, and elated all at once that it was off him. He started to cry with joy and leapt up from the floor into my lap. The soldier examined the collar. "It's a remote-controlled shock collar with an explosive charge, sir, designed to sever the neural connection to the body. It's a weird design, but it's easy enough to sever the connection to the remote control network and disable the explosive. Kinda childish compared to the ones the Ravadi pirates used, really." "Those were a bitch," he said. "I see. Can you disarm all the collars here?" the officer asked. "Will do, sir," the soldier replied and started working away. All of this carried on with a rather annoying argument carrying on in the background. Another human officer entered the cargo bay, this one of a similar or slightly higher rank. "Morning, Fleet Commander Kohaku," the previous officer asked. "Morning, Admiral Jax," he replied. "See what I see?" The fleet commander looked around the room and picked up one of the disabled collars to examine it. "Looks to me like a gaggle of escaped slaves aboard a stolen warship, using us as their shield, Commander. Looks to me like the so-called Great Three lied to us." "Our spies in the council were right. All the intel they got was golden," Jax replied. The admiral and fleet commander walked close to me, still holding a crying child, while a human soldier attempted to disarm my own collar. We shared a glance, a knowing look in the eyes, and passive conversation as my aged expression, scars, and stressed appearance told them everything. "Fleet commander, I will contact the fleet and inform Congress. We found a new slaver empire we need to burn," Admiral Jack said. "I say, for the last time, humans, you are harboring criminals. Return to us our property immediately." The Skakandi admiral's grating voice kept yelling over the comm. "And someone bring me that blowhard's head on a stick!" he yelled and left the room. "This is Fleet Commander Kohaku to all ships. I'm about to send you a few photos through the intranet. Take a close look at it and tell me if the Skakandi war fleet there deserves to exist," he said, then pressed some buttons on his wearable computer. The human soldiers on wearables, heads-up displays and computer terminals, all beeped in tandem, and the soldiers looked at it. It was a series of photographs of both myself and the children, close-ups of scars, bruises, beating marks and scratches, along with close-ups of the collars and explosive devices. A few tense moments passed, with the Skakandi admiral still berating them. "All ships set to maximum fire," came a barked order over the comm. 30 seconds later, the fleet of 200 warships was reduced to slag. The Skakandi admiral was caught shortly after, and the humans used what they called enhanced interrogation techniques to get the locations of fleets, homeworlds, and slave farms. 6 months. That's how long it took the humans to collapse the Great Three. An empire that stood for over 3,000 human years was toppled and brought to its knees in 6 months. Human warship fleets were many times more numerous and heavily armed than intelligence ever suggested, and human infantry and ground troops put up a significantly more vicious fight than anyone expected. Capitals fell, homeworlds burned. Within 6 months, all of the galaxy's slaves tasted freedom since the Great Three found them.